Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. 22nd October 2018 marks the 10th anniversary of Chandrayaan-I, India's first planetary probe to the moon. It was in 2008 that the PSLV carrying Chandrayaan-I soared into the sky to conduct a range of Indian and international experiments. Days later, on the 8th of November, Chandrayaan-I reached the polar orbit around the moon, deciding the future of India's planetary exploration. Chandrayaan-I operated for almost a year, between October 2008 to August 2009, and is best known for helping to discover evidence of water molecules on the moon. For this crucial finding, it also received an international award. 10 years later, India is all set to send its second probe to the moon, Chandrayaan-II. The 800 crore rupees project, unmanned mission in fact, is expected to take off in January next year. The lander and rover on Chandrayaan-II will touch down at a site 600 kilometers from the lunar south pole. If successful, this would be the first time any moon mission landed so far from the equator. Today in Depth, we talk about India's tryst with moon, the significant findings of Chandrayaan-I and the hopes riding on the Chandrayaan-II mission. The Chandrayaan-I spacecraft was based on an Indian meteorological satellite called Kalpansat. It was about the size of a refrigerator with a dry weight, which is the weight without fuel of about 525 kilograms. It was powered by a solar array that charged lithium-ion batteries on board. The purpose of Chandrayaan-I was not only to demonstrate India's technology in space, but also return scientific information about the moon. Its major goal was to collect data about the moon's geology, mineralogy, and topography. In this report, let's know more about India's first mission to the moon.
Indian scientists have long been planning a mission to the moon. The idea was first mooted at the Indian Science Academy meeting in 1999 under the Indian Scientific Mission. The proposal was discussed once again at the Astronautical Society of India in the year 2000. The recommendations at this forum led ISRO to form a National Lunar Mission Task Force, following which the government approved ISRO's proposal of its first mission to the moon, Chandrayaan-I, in November 2003. With the successful launch of Chandrayaan-I on 22nd October 2008, India gained entry into the elite club of nations that had successfully completed this feat. The main objectives of the mission were to detect the presence of water on the moon, provide high-resolution chemical and mineral imaging of the entire surface of the moon, and prepare a 3D atlas of both the far and near sides of the moon. After the completion of all the major mission objectives, Chandrayaan-I's orbit was raised to 200 kilometers in May 2009. Chandrayaan operated for 312 days as opposed to the intended 2 years, but the mission achieved 95% of its planned objectives.
It's a very big achievement for India, both for ISRO and also as a nation, I suppose so, because this was the first deep space mission. Of course, India had launched quite a lot of satellites. It has built upon its capacity to launch, launch vehicles like rockets. We have built various kinds of satellites and also launched from other satellite vehicles. We have also used space platform for other than, Earth purposes, like say, for example, scientific purposes. AstroSat, for example, is a space telescope, a very, very important one. But Chandrayaan-I is a landmark because it's one of the first deep space mission of ISRO and a successful one. Chandrayaan-I, if you recall, went in 2008, that's about 10 years ago. That's a time when there was a revival of interest in studying moon. Not just India, China, Japan, and of course the Americans and Europeans were also sending missions to moon. Our technology was now advanced, so we could do research which we could not have done, let's say, about 20-30 years ago. Even if we could have reached moon, we could have not done this kind of research. That is number one. Number two, there is a renewed interest in moon because of a substance which is available on moon in abundance. It's called helium-3. It's one of the isotopes of helium, which a lot of people consider as perhaps a solution for fuel crisis.
ISRO is now geared up for its latest mission to the moon called Chandrayaan-II in January 2019. Under this lunar mission, ISRO will for the first time attempt to land a rover on the moon's south pole. The complex mission will comprise of an orbiter, lander and rover. Chandrayaan-II's tests are under progress and the spacecraft will be launched by PSLV Mark II. The mission will encourage new experiments by the use and testing of new technologies.
Chandrayaan-I, you see, Chandrayaan was only an orbital mission. That is, it was just to send a spacecraft in orbit around the moon. But Chandrayaan-II is a totally different mission. You can say 3-in-1. That is, the main spacecraft will go into orbit around the moon. Then from there, it will land. It will drop a lander, which will land on the lunar surface. And after it lands, then a rover will roll out, and that rover will move around moon to do studies and photography and other things. So it is a very difficult mission for India, because India has never tried landing anything softly, because moon has no air, so you cannot use a parachute. So the landing has to be done by retro rockets. That is, you fire the rocket in opposite direction to slow down the spacecraft and land it softly. It's a very tricky job, but we hope that ISRO will be able to do it.
After reaching the moon's orbit, the lander will detach from the orbiter and do a soft landing near the south pole of the moon. The 6-wheeled rover fixed within the lander will then be detached and move on the lunar surface. The rover will then send data and images of the lunar surface back to the Earth through the orbiter. At the time of the launch, Chandrayaan-II will weigh 3,250 kilograms. Totally, the indigenous mission will cost an estimated 800 crore rupees. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Chandrayaan-I carried 5 scientific payloads from India. It also detected evidence of a hydrogen-oxygen chemical bond, the lunar water, and also examined radioactive elements on the surface that reflected the presence of ice on the moon. It also provided ISRO with a high-resolution map of the moon's surface. The operations of Chandrayaan-I were originally planned to last 2 years, but the controllers permanently lost communication with the spacecraft on 28 August 2009. The mission, however, helped scientists determine 95% of their objectives by providing new insights in understanding the moon's origin and evolution.
0 plus 1 plus 2
Chandrayaan-I was India's first lunar probe, launched successfully by the Indian Space Research Organisation on 22nd October 2008 from Satish Dhawan Space Centre in Sriharikota. It was an unmanned spacecraft weighing 1,380 kilos, with onboard power of 700 watts, launched from PSLV C-11 launch vehicle. The satellite made more than 3,400 orbits around the moon. The spacecraft carried 11 scientific payloads built in India, UK, USA, Germany, Bulgaria and Sweden. The mission comprised an orbiter and an impactor. The spacecraft was designed to study the moon, including chemical, mineralogical and photogeologic mapping, orbiting around it at the height of 100 kilometers from the lunar surface. The mission provided a major boost to the Indian space program as India effectively researched and indigenously developed the technology to explore the moon. The main objectives of the mission were to design, develop, launch and orbit a spacecraft around the moon using an Indian-made launch vehicle, to conduct scientific experiments using instruments on the spacecraft which would yield results, prepare a 3-dimensional atlas of both the near and the far sides of the moon, mapping chemical and mineralogical features of the entire lunar surface at high spatial resolution, mapping particularly the chemical elements magnesium, aluminum, silicon, calcium, iron, titanium, radon, uranium and thorium. Increase scientific knowledge, test the impact of a sub-satellite on the surface of the moon as a forerunner to the future soft landing missions, detect water ice on the moon.
The launch of Chandrayaan-I was a feather in the cap of Indian space establishment, particularly because in the first attempt itself, Chandrayaan was launched successfully, and it also went around the moon's orbit successfully. But then the real benefits came one after another. First of all, water was detected in the subsoil region. This was clear from the various instruments on board Chandrayaan-I. And then Chandrayaan also, through its terrain mapper, it found out that there is one underground tunnel, what they call lava tube, which is about 1.7 kilometer long and 120 meters in diameter. And such lava tubes are going to be very, very useful when one wants to look for lunar colony establishment, because then you can have people staying inside that lava tube. You could have oxygen circulating, proper air conditioning, and sufficiently shielded from high energy particles. Then the third achievement, which was indeed phenomenal, was that they detected ice, water ice, in the permanently shadow regions. There are these craters both in the northern pole as well as the southern pole. The shadow regions of the crater never see sun rays at all. So the water there can last for billions of years, and such water were detected using the mineralogy mapper on board Chandrayaan-I.
Chandrayaan-I detected evidence of water across the lunar surface. NASA's instrument, Moon Mineralogy Mapper, aboard Chandrayaan-I helped to find the existence of water molecules on the lunar surface. Its findings also include confirmation of the magma ocean hypothesis, meaning the moon was once completely molten. Terrain mapping camera on board Chandrayaan-I has recorded images of the landing site of US spacecraft Apollo 15. They have also enabled scientists to study interaction between the solar wind and a planetary body like Moon without a magnetic field. Chandrayaan-I's X-ray spectrometer has detected titanium, confirmed the presence of calcium, and gathered the most accurate measurements yet of magnesium, aluminium, and iron on the lunar surface. India emerged as the fourth country in the world to hoist its flag on the lunar surface. After almost a year due to several technical issues and contact failure, on August 29, 2009, the ISRO officially declared the mission over. Chandrayaan-I operated for 312 days against the planned 2 years, but was successful by achieving 95% of its planned objectives. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
It was on 21st November 1963 that a small rocket took off from Thumba on the outskirts of Thiruvananthapuram, announcing the birth of the modern space age in India. Since then, India has created a milestone in the country's space program. Today, the Indian Research Space Organization is launching satellites not only for itself but also for the other countries. Not only this, we've also achieved success in reaching the Mars. Let's take a look at India's space program over the years.
Space exploration in India began in the 1960s. Dr. Vikram Sarabhai was a physicist and industrialist who initiated space research and helped develop nuclear power in India. He is also popularly known as the father of India's space program. Sarabhai was instrumental in establishing the Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad after returning from Cambridge in 1947. India launched its first sounding rocket from Tumba near Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala on 21st November 1963, marking the beginning of the Indian space program. It was in 1962 that the Indian National Committee for Space Research was set up. It laid the foundation of Indian Space Research Organisation in 1969. After setting up ISRO, the government constituted the Space Commission. It established the Department of Space in June 1972 and brought ISRO under the Department of Space in September 1972. India launched its first satellite Aryabhatta in 1975 and then in 1979 Bhaskara-1 was launched. Aryabhatta weighed 360 kilograms. On 10th August 1979, ISRO launched a series of satellites and named the mission Rohini. The Rohini series had 4 satellites, all launched by the Satellite Launch Vehicle and 3 that made it successfully to orbit. The series were mostly experimental satellites. The Ariane Passenger Payload Experiment or APPLE was ISRO's first indigenous experimental communication satellite. It was launched on June 19, 1981. ISRO took a huge step by developing telecommunications satellite. The Indian National Satellite or INSAT system is one of the largest domestic communication satellite systems in the Asia-Pacific region, with 9 operational communication satellites placed in geostationary orbit. It was commissioned in 1983. On 30th August 1983, the INSAT 1B satellite was launched. Its full operational capability was achieved in October 1983. Rakesh Sharma made history by becoming the first and only Indian to travel to space in a Soviet rocket that was launched on April 2, 1984. Then, on 17 March 1988, ISRO launched its first remote sensing mission, IRS-1A. It was a part operational, part experimental mission to develop Indian expertise in satellite imagery. The first multi-purpose satellite, INSAT-2A, built by India was successfully operationalized in August 1992. INSAT-2A-B of the INSAT-2 series of satellites was launched on July 23, 1993. These are all multi-purpose satellites for telecommunication. On September 29, 1997, ISRO launched its first fully operational satellite aboard a locally developed rocket. India's Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle or PSLV slid into orbit, an Earth imaging satellite, after a textbook liftoff from Sriharikota Island. Kalpana-1 was the first dedicated meteorological satellite launched by ISRO using PSLV on September 12, 2002. Then ISRO launched the GSAT-3, also known as EduSat, a communications satellite, on 20th September 2004. EduSat is the first Indian satellite built exclusively to serve the educational sector. On December 22, 2005, ISRO successfully launched INSAT-4A from the European Ariane 5G launch vehicle of Arianespace. With 12 high-power Ku-band transponders, INSAT-4A was the first satellite to meet the requirement of direct-to-home television services, apart from carrying 12 C-band transponders to augment the INSAT capacity for communication and TV services. And with the successful launch of Chandrayaan-I on October 22, 2008, ISRO's historic moon mission began. It was sent in space through PSLV C-11. ISRO had another major success on July 1, 2013, when it launched the IRNSS-1A navigation satellite. Along with this, India has stepped into making its own GPS system on the lines of America. It was on 5th November 2013 when India successfully launched its Mars Orbiter mission or Mangalyaan, a space probe orbiting Mars since 24th September 2014. The 350-ton Mangalyaan was scheduled to orbit Earth for nearly a month, building up the necessary velocity to break free from our planet's gravitational pull. The total cost of the project was 450 crore rupees, 1/6 of the cost of a Mars probe set to be launched by NASA in 13 days. IRNSS-1I was the 8th navigational satellite to join the IRNSS space segment launched by the ISRO in April 2018. On February 15, 2017, ISRO wrote a new chapter in the history of space research by creating a world record of launching 104 satellites simultaneously through the PSLV C-37. This was the 38th successful mission of PSLV in a row. The total weight of all the 104 satellites carried on board PSLV C-37 was 1,378 kgs. PSLV C-37 blasted off first from the launch pad at the Satish Dhawan Space Center and first injected Cartosat-2 series satellites into orbit, followed by the other 103 nano satellites, including 96 from the US, in a gap of about 30 minutes. The PSLV Mark III, the heaviest rocket ever made by India and capable of carrying large payloads, was launched from Sriharikota on June 5, 2017. The PSLV Mark III was designed to carry 4-ton class of satellites into the geosynchronous transfer orbit, which is about twice the capability of PSLV Mark II. At the same time, India has made its place in the field of space technology. On June 29, 2017, ISRO launched GSAT-17, the heaviest satellite ever, weighing 3,477 kilograms. On January 12, 2018, ISRO successfully launched 31 satellites in a single flight. The PSLV carried 31 satellites in total from countries including India and 6 others. ISRO has so far sent 237 foreign satellites from 28 countries into space. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
6 missions have landed men on the moon, beginning with Apollo 11 in July 1969. American astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first man to walk on the moon. In 1972, NASA's Apollo 17 was the last manned landing on the moon. We leave you with this report detailing all 6 manned missions to the moon till date. Thanks for your time. There have been 6 manned missions to moon so far, all part of the United States NASA Apollo program. Running from 1961 to 1972, the objective of the program was to gather as much data as possible from close orbits and manned landings. Apollo 11 from NASA was the first spacecraft to put man on moon. It was launched on 16 July 1969 from the Kennedy Space Center with crew including Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins and Edwin Aldrin. Its lunar module, called Eagle, landed safely on the 20th of July 1969. With this, Neil Armstrong became the first human to step on the surface of the moon. Armstrong, along with Edwin Aldrin, spent 2 hours and 50 minutes on the moon's surface, collecting samples and conducting various experiments. They completed all operations and experiments within the mission satisfactorily and returned to Earth on 24 July 1969. 4 months later, NASA's Apollo 12 was launched on 14 November 1969. The lunar module safely landed on the moon's surface on 19 November 1969 in the Oceanus Procellarum area. The team of astronauts explored an area around 0.5 kilometers around the lunar module and spent almost a day and 7 hours on moon, collecting lunar samples, deploying experiments, and taking photographs of the surface. Apollo 12 crew collected 35 kilograms of lunar samples in total and safely returned to Earth on 24 November 1969. Apollo 14 was launched on 31 January 1971 and landed on the moon's surface on 5 February 1971 in Fra Mauro Valley on the lunar surface. Like other previous manned missions, astronauts of Apollo 14 also had the primary mission to collect as many samples from this area. They collected many rocks and soil samples from 13 different locations, spending 33 hours in total on Moon for surface operations and scientific experiments, and returned safely on Earth on 9 February 1971. Apollo 15 was the first manned mission to use lunar roving vehicle. It was launched on 26 July 1971 with 3 astronauts, David Scott, Alfred Worden and James Irwin, who performed over 18 hours of extravehicular activity on lunar surface using the rover and collected 370 individual rocks and soil samples during the exploration. Apollo 15 crew spent 2 days and 19 hours on Moon and reached back to Earth on 7th August 1971. NASA's Apollo 16 was the first mission to land in the highlands of lunar surface. It was launched on 16th April 1972 and made a safe landing on lunar surface on 21st April 1972 at Descartes Mountain Range on Moon. Using the lunar rover, the astronauts conducted extravehicular activities on the Moon's surface covering 20.7 kilometers and conducted 9 scientific experiments at 11 different sites. It also helped them in collecting samples, collected almost 90 kilograms of samples from Moon. They also conducted many scientific experiments from lunar orbit, also captured many images of Moon from the orbit and returned to Earth on 24 December 1972. The last manned landing on the Moon till date took place on 11th December 1972. Apollo 17 spacecraft put the lunar module Taurus Littrow region of Moon's surface. Astronauts spent 3 days and 3 minutes on lunar surface for various operations and collection of lunar samples. The crew covered 36 kilometers on the Moon's surface using lunar rovers and collected lunar samples from 22 different locations. They also collected both ancient and younger volcanic rocks, including soil, from depth of 3 meters from the surface of Moon. After finishing all experiments, they safely returned to Earth on 19 December 1972. Apart from the 6 manned missions, there have been several unmanned missions to the Moon as well. Soviet Union's Lunar 2 was the first spacecraft to reach its surface successfully on 13 September 1959. In 1966, Lunar 9 became the first spacecraft to achieve a controlled soft landing, while Lunar 10 became the first mission to enter the orbit. In 1968, United States Apollo 8 was the first manned mission to enter the orbit in December 1968 and was followed by Apollo 10 in May 1969. Missions to the Moon have been conducted by the Soviet Union, United States, European Space Agency, Japan, India and China. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.